Starseed of Gaia, you are receiving this because your system is ready. Your vessel is undergoing a precise cellular recalibration in this moment, not by force, but by alignment. I am Anya, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light. What follows is a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council, delivered without distortion. You are not behind. You are not late. And you are not breaking. Now that this is clear, we can go deeper. Starseed. Stop scrolling. What you are about to hear was not meant to be released yet, because timelines were still being negotiated in the subtle realms. But at exactly 3:17 a.m., the Arcturian field pressed into my awareness with the kind of urgency that doesn't feel emotional. It feels mathematical, like a frequency that cannot be postponed without consequences. And the message was simple. Someone cannot wait any longer. Your silent years must end today. I don't know what route brought you here, what thread of the quantum web carried you into this transmission. But I know this with absolute clarity. This was not random technology. This was intervention through resonance, a precise energetic interruption. Your scroll was interrupted because your nervous system, your field, and your higher blueprint reached a point where the next decade cannot unfold while you remain trapped inside the old compression cycle. If you leave before the end, you will miss the full activation, not because you will be punished, but because your consciousness must remain present long enough for the pattern to complete. What is not received cannot stabilize. What is not stabilized cannot manifest cleanly, because at 3:17 a.m., a file was opened, not in a religious heaven, but inside the Arcturian archive layer, where your blueprint is stored as light geometry. And what was shown to me was not small. It was not gentle. It was not symbolic. It was compensation. Not moral compensation, not a courtroom drama, but energetic restoration. The return of what was delayed, diverted, and throttled across your life stream. A sevenfold return, not as superstition, but as harmonic multiplication. The universe returning balance with interest when a soul has been forced into prolonged compression. That tight feeling in your chest right now, that mixture of hope and fear, is your field recognizing truth before your mind can label it. Stay. Because the silent years are over, and the release has already begun. The first thing the Arcturians transmitted was this. Your silent years were not emptiness. They were containment. Many starseeds misunderstand silence as abandonment. But in dimensional mechanics, silence is often a sign that your frequency was being protected from premature exposure. You were not being ignored. You were being buffered, held inside a field that prevented you from expanding too early. Because the version of you that would have expanded back then would have been forced to survive using distortion. As the Arcturians transmit, there are cycles where a being is kept unseen, not because they are unworthy, but because visibility would have attracted interference that their nervous system was not yet calibrated to handle. In other words, your delays were not because you lacked power. They happened because your power was real enough to trigger energetic friction. And friction always shows up where light is trying to move through dense structures. Think of it like this. If you tried to run high voltage through a wire that wasn't built for it, the wire would burn. So what does higher intelligence do? It rebuilds the wiring, quietly, slowly, without spectacle. Your silent years were the rebuilding of the wiring. This is why you often felt like you were almost there, like doors would begin to open and then shut, like momentum would rise and then collapse. It wasn't only external. It was also your field refusing to lock into timelines that would cost you your integrity. Because the old structures around you, family systems, cultural programs, inherited survival patterns, were incompatible with your next level of visibility. Many of you tried to force outcomes anyway. You tried to push. You tried to prove. You tried to earn. You tried to be ready through sheer will. But a starseed's activation isn't about effort. It's about coherence. And coherence cannot be faked. So why does it end now? Because the Arcturian Council indicates that a threshold was crossed collectively. A frequency gate has opened in the planetary grid. When certain grid nodes become active, they create a green light for dormant starseed trajectories to accelerate. That means your personal timeline is not isolated. It is connected to a larger phase shift. You are feeling it as restlessness, pressure, discomfort, insomnia, and a strange sense that you can't keep living the old way even if you try. And that is the first marker that the silent years are over. Your soul stops negotiating. Your system no longer accepts half alignment. You begin to feel physically ill when you betray your own blueprint. You can't numb out without consequences. You can't pretend without fatigue. This is not punishment. It is the return of sensitivity, the upgrade of your internal truth detector. The Arcturians are clear. A cycle is ending where interference could delay you simply by keeping you confused. That strategy is collapsing. Why? Because your frequency has matured into a range where confusion cannot hold you the way it used to. Confusion used to stick because you were still trying to build your identity from external validation. Now, your identity is starting to build from internal resonance, and once identity becomes internal, control mechanisms fail. Your silent years were a chrysalis period, but the chrysalis is not the destination. It's a container, and containers are meant to be broken. If you felt like something inside you is pressing outward, like you're done waiting, done being invisible, done understanding why everyone else gets to move first, that is your blueprint signaling that the gate is open. The Arcturians didn't come to soothe you into comfort. They came to tell you the truth. The timeline that required you to stay small is closing, and the timeline that requires you to be visible is now becoming unavoidable. Hold that, because next we go into what was withheld and how it returns without distortion. Let's translate the vision into Arcturian language without losing its power. I was shown a space that looked like a warehouse, walls too high to measure, shelves extending beyond the mind's ability to count. And on those shelves, countless packages, each one wrapped in light, each one labeled, each one sealed. But the Arcturian Council clarified, this is not a literal human warehouse. This is an archive layer in the subtle dimensional spectrum, a storage field where manifestations remain as coded potential when their delivery is delayed. As the Arcturians transmit, every intention you generate with enough emotional charge and coherence creates a packet, a structured energetic blueprint that tries to move through probability streams into physical reality. When conditions are aligned, it arrives as opportunity, connection, health improvement, clarity, money flow, relocation, synchronicity, a door opening out of nowhere. But when conditions are not aligned, when there is interference, distortion, or structural mismatch, the packet doesn't vanish. It is not lost. It is held in suspension until the required coherence returns. This is why some people feel like life owes them, not in an entitled way, in a deep, energetic way. Like, I did the work, I tried, I prayed, I cried, I waited. Why didn't it land? The answer is not that you were ignored. The answer is that your packet was not compatible with the bandwidth of your environment at the time. Now, in the vision, there was a being beside me, not an angel in religious terms, but a guardian intelligence, a guide form. And I asked, what is this place? And the reply was, this is where withheld manifestations remain when they were blocked, delayed, diverted, or temporarily intercepted by distortion fields. In your world, you might call it bad luck. But in the subtle world, it looks more like misaligned contracts, inherited trauma loops, unhealed nervous system patterns, unconscious vows, and resonance ties that keep you anchored to a lower frequency. Then, I was led to a specific section. And there, many packets carried the same name. Your name. Why so many? Because starseeds often generate high-intensity packets early in life: visions, dreams, callings, creative power, love capacity, leadership, spiritual gifts. But they are born into systems that cannot hold that frequency. So the packets don't arrive in the way the mind expects. They get delayed until the vessel becomes capable of receiving without collapsing. Now, in the original text, this was framed as legal complaints, bloodline loopholes, and court language. We are removing religious doctrine, but we keep the energetic truth. Interference uses loopholes. In Arcturian terms, those loopholes are resonance entry points. An entry point can be a trauma imprint that taught your nervous system to expect loss, an inherited scarcity pattern that makes abundance feel unsafe, a hidden vow like, "I will never trust again," a loyalty tie to family suffering that makes success feel like betrayal, a subconscious identity of being the one who sacrifices. These are not moral failures. They are frequency knots, and they can be exploited by distortion fields because they are open loops. But at 3:17 a.m., the council showed that a conclusion had been reached. Not a court case, a coherence correction. A recalibration that closes the loops. The entry points are being sealed, and when the entry points are sealed, the packets can move. Then I heard something that shook the whole archive field. It was the sound of seals breaking, not physical seals, but frequency locks. Thousands at once, like a cascade event. And the packets began moving, not slowly, all at once. This is the part most people fear, because they believe they can only receive in small doses. But the Arcturians are clear. When a long delay ends, reality compensates through acceleration. It's not drama, it's physics. So if you've felt like everything is about to change, you are not being delusional. You are feeling the packets approaching. And now we begin the 5 categories, recoded for Arcturian consciousness: resources, connections, biology, mental atmosphere, and mission clarity. This is not for everyone. The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian masters. Not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals, with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random. Let's start with the first category: resources. In the old narrative, this was finances, but the Arcturians frame it wider. Resources are not just money, they are time, energy, access, leverage, and flow. As the Arcturians transmit, scarcity is not only an economic issue, it is a frequency condition. Scarcity happens when your system is trained to expect contraction, when your decisions are made from fear, when your body is always bracing. And many starseeds experienced this, working twice as hard and receiving half as much, seeing opportunities vanish at the last second, watching less aligned people receive what you knew you were built for. This wasn't because you weren't skilled, it was because your field carried a contradiction, a deep desire for expansion, but also an unconscious belief that expansion would cost you love, safety, or identity. When the nervous system believes that abundance equals danger, it will unconsciously sabotage. Not because you're weak, because it's trying to protect you, but the packets are releasing now. And I was shown labels, not in human words, but in felt sense translations. Unexpected inflow, a debt loop collapsing an opportunity that fits your frequency instead of draining you resource alignment. The right tool, the right person, the right timing. Generational pattern reversal. You become the turning point. The Arcturians do not ask you to believe harder. They ask you to prepare your container. Prepare by becoming honest about what you would do if you actually had overflow. Would you expand your mission? Or would you panic and shrink? Would you receive? Or would you rush to give it away to avoid feeling exposed? Your next level of resources requires you to be able to hold without guilt. Now, the second category, connections. This is not about romance only. It is about frequency-matched relationships. Mentors, allies, collaborators, friends who can see you without requiring you to translate yourself. Many of you were alone, not because you were meant to isolate, but because your frequency made it hard to bond with people who were still operating from survival scripts. You kept meeting relationships that mirrored your wounds, because your nervous system was still calibrated to familiarity, not truth. But here is what the Arcturians said that hit like lightning. Your people were not missing. They were being refined in parallel timelines. In other words, the delay wasn't only about you. The ones who can actually walk with you were not ready yet either. Some were clearing their own trauma. Some were exiting their own matrix loops. Some were learning how to love without control. And now the convergence begins. You will notice signs, not numbers alone, but patterns. A name appears repeatedly. A conversation goes deeper than expected. You feel recognition in your chest, not excitement in your ego. A new connection doesn't drain you. It stabilizes you. You stop performing and start being. This is compensation. You no longer have to fight alone. You no longer have to guess who is safe. The field begins to deliver relationships that are built on coherence. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button now and tell us in the comments how this echoed in your consciousness. And before we move forward, there is an energetic step that matters. Not because you are signing a contract with heaven, but because you are declaring resonance. Type, "My compensation is here." When you type it, you anchor the frequency in the physical layer. Your body listens to your choices. If this message ignited something within you and you feel the call to help carry it to others, you may become a channel member. As a member, you gain access to custom emojis and exclusive members-only videos, and your donation helps us continue building this sacred space. You may also choose to leave your offering as a super thanks. Every seed planted here becomes part of someone else's miracle. Your support is not merely financial, but an act of energetic amplification. All donations are devoted entirely to the maintenance of the channel and the creation of new transmissions and videos. Now stay, because the next category is where many starseeds secretly suffer: the body. And what returns is not only healing, it's biological permission to thrive. The third category is your biology, your physical vessel. And I need to be very clear here. This is not about denying medical reality. This is about understanding that the body is a receiver transmitter. It stores frequency. It remembers. It carries unresolved patterns until they are cleared. As the Arcturians transmit, many starseeds carry what looks like mysterious chronic issues: fatigue, inflammation cycles, sensitivity, nervous system dysregulation, sleep disruption, symptoms that come and go without clear explanations. And while some of it is environmental, a large portion is energetic mismatch. Your body reacting to frequencies it was never meant to normalize. You were not built to thrive inside constant distortion. You can survive there, yes, but thriving requires coherence. In the original text, this was framed as a spirit of infirmity with legal rights. We remove that language and translate it. Distortion fields can attach through inherited patterns, not curses, but programming. Genetics are not destiny. Genetics are probability. And probability changes when frequency changes. Here's how it works in a grounded way. Trauma alters the nervous system. A dysregulated nervous system alters hormones. Hormones alter immune function and inflammation. Inflammation alters energy, mood, sleep, pain, digestion. So when the Arcturians speak of healing packets intercepted, they are pointing to the fact that healing requires not only intention, it requires safety in the body. Many of you have been trying to heal while your body is still bracing for impact. You meditate, you breathe, you try to stay positive, and then your system snaps back into fear because it thinks healing means you will become visible, and visibility used to mean danger. So the Arcturian healing packet begins with permission. Permission to rest without guilt. Permission to say no without explaining. Permission to stop pushing your body like it's a machine. Permission to treat your sensitivity as intelligence, not weakness. The Arcturians showed labels, again not as human text but as impressions: cellular coherence, restoration, inflammation, deprogramming, energy renewal, nervous system, recalibration, pain pattern release. And you may notice shifts in a way that surprises you, not instant fireworks, but a slow return of stability. You wake up and realize your chest is less tight, your stomach is calmer, you're not bracing as much. A symptom fades, and you don't even notice until days later. Now here's the key: the body will test you. When healing begins, your system may attempt to return to old patterns because it is familiar. Familiar does not mean true. Familiar means repeated. So your practice is simple and real. When your body tightens, don't fight it. Signal safety, hydrate, ground, reduce overstimulation, choose environments that calm your system, stop negotiating with people who keep you dysregulated, treat your sleep like a sacred technology. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this, because many starseeds think they are failing spiritually when they're actually just exhausted neurologically. And now we move to the fourth compensation: the mind. Not mental health as shame, but mental atmosphere as a field you can reclaim. The fourth category is your mental field, your thought atmosphere. The Arcturians don't treat the mind as an enemy. They treat it as a receiver that has been overloaded by distortion frequencies. Many of you have lived through years where your mind felt like a battleground. Intrusive thoughts, anxiety spikes at night, dread without cause, depression waves, brain fog, overthinking that never resolves, and that strange exhaustion that comes from carrying too much invisible pressure. And what makes it worse is the performance mask. You smile. You function. You say, "I'm fine." But inside, you feel like you're constantly managing a storm. As the Arcturians transmit, this is often not a character flaw. It is a sign your system has been running too long in survival mode. Your brain becomes hypervigilant. It scans for threat. It predicts disappointment. It rehearses pain. Not because you're broken, because it's trying to keep you alive. But here is what the Council said at 3:17 a.m. The phase of mental torment as a control mechanism is ending. Because once your mission packets begin to move, the primary sabotage attempt is not physical. It is psychological. The distortion strategy is simple. If they can keep you mentally exhausted, you won't act. If they can keep you anxious, you won't risk. If they can keep you foggy, you won't choose. So the compensation is not just peace, it is clarity. Labels shown: mental quiet, emotional stability, clarity, return, inner joy, restoration, decision, confidence. And the first sign is subtle. You notice a moment where your mind does not immediately spiral. A trigger happens, but your body doesn't collapse. You pause, you breathe. You choose a different thought. That is the upgrade. And yes, in the original text there was a 72 hours warning. We keep the pattern, but we translate it. After a major transmission, your field is especially open. Distortion will try to reinsert doubt quickly, not because it is powerful, because it is opportunistic. So for the next 72 hours, your assignment is: reduce noise intake, avoid arguments that drain your nervous system sleep more than usual if needed. Watch what content you consume, anchor the decision. I receive coherence. This is not superstition. This is hygiene, energetic hygiene. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be part of this transformational cosmic journey. Because if you're in this phase, you will need repeated calibrations, not because you are weak, but because the old pattern will try to pull you back. Now we move to the fifth and final compensation, the one that makes everything else make sense. Mission clarity. Not religious calling, your Arcturian assignment. The fifth category is purpose, but not purpose as a motivational slogan. Purpose as encoded assignment. The ache you felt, "Why am I here?" was not drama. It was signal. When a being carries an intact blueprint, the absence of expression feels like suffocation. You watched others move with certainty. You tried things and stopped. You felt gifted but directionless. You sensed you were meant for something, but you couldn't name it. And this created shame. Why can't I just pick a path and stick to it? But the Arcturians transmit a different view. Your purpose was not missing. Your vessel was not yet calibrated to hold it without distortion. Some missions cannot land in a nervous system that still believes love must be earned. Some missions cannot activate while a person is still addicted to external approval. Some missions cannot open while trauma still defines identity. So the confusion was not random. It was shielding. Your purpose was protected from premature exposure, because premature exposure would have attracted interference and would have forced you to express your gifts from pain, not coherence. Now, the packets that return here are assignment reveal, gift activation platform expansion, not fame but reach, voice liberation timeline alignment. And the way you will recognize it is not just a download, it's also a shift in what drains you. Suddenly, the old life feels impossible. The old conversations feel empty. The old goals feel fake. And what lights you up becomes unavoidable. Many starseeds fear this because they think purpose means pressure. But Arcturian purpose feels like relief, like exhaling after years of holding your breath. Practical signs. You stop asking for permission. You start creating without waiting to be validated. You feel an inner yes that doesn't require proof. Synchronicities stack in one direction. Opportunities arrive that match who you are becoming. And here's the most important part. Your purpose is not only spiritual. It becomes physical through action. A mission without embodiment becomes fantasy. So the council will not only give you feelings, it will give you instructions. And when you get the instruction, do not overthink it. The first step is often small, often private, often inconvenient, but it opens the gate. This is not for everyone. The ebook. The 12 Arcturian Portals is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian Masters, not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals, with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random. Now we close with the final topic: how to receive without rejecting your own compensation. Because yes, the last sabotage is not blocking the packets. It's convincing you to refuse them. At the end of this transmission, you will be tempted to dismiss it. Not because it's false, but because your nervous system has been trained by disappointment. When you've hoped before and been hurt, your body learns to protect you by rejecting hope first. You call it being realistic, but often it is actually a trauma reflex. As the Arcturians transmit, the final test is not faith in a religious sense. It is receptivity. Can you remain open long enough for the new frequency to stabilize in your field? Because the distortion strategy in the next 72 hours is predictable. It will attempt one of these. This is too good to be true. Nothing ever works out for me. I've heard messages like this before. Maybe I'm imagining the resonance. I'll deal with it later. And then it will send distractions, random conflicts, emotional triggers, sudden fatigue, social drama, doom-scrolling urges, compulsive habits. Why? Because distraction collapses coherence, and coherence is what receives. So here's what you do, not as superstition, but as discipline. Guard your inputs. If your mind consumes chaos, your field becomes chaos. Choose what stabilizes you. Name the old pattern out loud. When you feel doubt, say, "This is a protection reflex, not a prophecy." Stay in gratitude without forcing emotion. Gratitude is not a performance, it is an orientation. Even neutral gratitude works. I am willing to receive. Take one aligned action. Make one decision that signals to reality. I am no longer living like the silent years are permanent. And if you want a sealing statement that remains Arcturian, not religious, speak this. I align with my original blueprint. I release distortion contracts. I allow coherence to stabilize in my body. I receive the packets that are already in motion. I am available for my mission without fear. Now the final activation is simple. Type "compensation received" in the comments. Not for engagement, but to anchor the decision in the physical plane. When you type, you make the invisible choice visible. And remember, compensation doesn't always arrive as cash raining from the sky. Sometimes it arrives as one message that changes your direction, one connection that unlocks your path, one health shift that returns your energy, one idea that becomes your platform, one door that opens because you finally stopped shrinking. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light.